Hey there, visionary business builders. In this episode, you're in for a real treat. I'm in conversation with Bob Holt, seasoned entrepreneur with over 3 decades of public markets experience. Bob is probably one of the largest buyers of blue-collar businesses, best known as founder of Mears PLC, which he floated in 1996, one of the most successful floats on AIM, with spectacular growth and still thriving today, making tens of millions in profits and a couple of billion in revenue. Whilst as chairman for Mears, he was asked to rescue a similar business called Lake House, which he later rebranded to SureSave and successfully turned around over 4 years, delivering millions back into shareholder profits. Bob, you then took an unusual post out of your domain as CEO for Revolution Beauty, which I know came with its own unique set of challenges. And currently you're invested in a shell company called Rise PLC, which focuses on the energy domain, where you have a number of acquisitions in the pipeline. In this conversation, I'll be unpacking Bob's entrepreneurial journey, the highs, the lows, and everything in between. Listeners, you're in for a masterclass in mergers and acquisitions, valuing businesses, obstacles in raising money, floating businesses, managing investor expectations, and much more. If you enjoy this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the Inner Circle Boardroom Visionary Business Builders. You can find us on YouTube or LinkedIn. Hit the bell notification to stay in the loop. Now let's get this show on the road. Bob, welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start off with a quick round of questions on your younger self before we dive into your visionary business building career. So here goes. Firstly, how many siblings are you?
Well, I'm now one, but sadly my brother and sister, they were only my stepbrother and sister. They both passed away, so I'm an orphan now. Both my parents and my brother and sister died.
What was mum and dad's occupation?
My mother, who grew up in, I suppose you would say, abject poverty in the north of England, must have had a burning desire to get on in life. She met my father. I was a result of their meeting. And he had a number of part-time jobs so they could maintain the family home and all that sort of stuff. And then bought a small grocery shop. And that then transformed into buying a second grocery shop. My father at the time was office worker. He then stopped working, went to work in one of the other shops working for my mother. So my mother was the governor.
At the age of 8, what did you want to be?
Football.
Excellent. Were you any good?
No, not really.
Favourite teacher or lesson at school?
Sports masters, various, yeah.
Can you describe your school or college report in a few words?
It would have said something like, when Robert stops trying to use the rest of the class, he may well get on in life. The only thing I enjoyed at school really was sport. I swam, played cricket, soccer, basketball. That was my only real interest. Lots of lads in that age. I just had aspirations to become football.
What's your earliest childhood memory that comes to mind?
It would probably be around football. We'd go and watching Oldham Athletic, and it'd be watching one of the most widely regarded best footballers of his generation, a wee Scottishman called Bobby Johnston. And this chap, I think he had an alcohol problem. Well, I know he had an alcohol problem. But he had been transferred from Hibernian in Scotland down to Manchester City, played for Scotland, scored in the FA Cup final 2 years on the trot. Then he came to Oldham. I think they gave up with him, and he came to Oldham. And watching a genius when you're 6 or 7 among a bunch of basic is just mind-blowing for a young man. You either are interested in it and it grabs you and captivates you, or it passes you by. Well, it grabbed me and it gave me fascinating for life. Still drop notes to people about, you must understand and read about Bobby Johnston because he was something else. I mean, that's probably my best memory.
First book which left a lasting and influential impression on you, and why?
Yeah, I didn't read much at school. Obviously, I read what I had to read, but when I left school, I then developed an interest in reading, believe it or not, and I started reading all the Agatha Christie's, easy reading, and I then read all the Sherlock Holmes novels. And I think what that did for many years, probably for 20 years on, gave me a thirst for reading. I would regularly go away on holiday and take with me half a dozen or a dozen books. And I'm still a keen reader now.
Who was your business role model growing up and why?
Well, the only business role model in reality I've ever had was my mother, because she was better than most people. He gave me that work ethic I've been glad to see.
So you claim to be a failed accountant, clearly very successful as an investor and scaling businesses. Can you talk me through how you first came across Mears back in the day and how you negotiated the purchase of that business?
Well, I had worked for two of the country's biggest entrepreneurs, Michael now Lord Ashcroft and Tony Berry, and they taught me, I had international experience living in the US, traveling the world buying businesses. So I had experience better than 99.9% of people with the best qualifications on the planet, I suspect. The fact that I couldn't pass an exam, or decided not to even bother trying to pass an exam, because I probably wouldn't have passed it anyway, didn't change the fact that I could probably read a balance sheet quicker, better than most people. I could seem to get to the nub of something. But I think what has followed me throughout my career and throughout my decision-making has been my interest in the person behind the transaction, is having a very direct approach. It's very easy when you're buying something to ask very direct and sometimes very personal questions. What's your relationship with this person? I need to know because I'm going to merge this with this. And how does that affect that? So I think in coming around to answering your questions, I was just coming to the end of my 3 years with Mighty. I'd been one of the early movers in that organisation. I'd worked for them in the previous life as a finance director of one of the subsidiaries. So I knew how to add up, and I was looking for something to do. And I just happened to come across a business in the same sector, which was Mears. It was small. It was based literally from where I was living, 20 miles away. Brilliant. I met the owner within 30 minutes. It became very evident. Mike Turley and I were very, very similar, but had different backgrounds. Mike was a quantity surveyor and had done built a very successful business. And for the first time in his career with Mears, he'd started hitting a few bumps in the road. And he wanted to get out. And he'd say he panicked, but he had some concerns about carrying on. So he came, he put it up for sale with Grant Thornton. I met him with his advisor. He was looking to sell it for net asset value, which at the time was about £500,000. I said, well, I know the sector. I think I can do something. I'm looking for something to float. So I'm not going to buy it for net asset value, Mike, but what I will do, I'll buy 25% for 50 grand. He just leant across the tables, shook hands. When will you be there? I said, I'll be there tomorrow. And that was it. So I bid Mike 50 grand for 25% of the business, got involved. We had complementary skills. I basically said to Mike, you bugger off and run the jobs, and I'll run everything here. And that's how it worked. 7 or 8 months later, we floated the business with a valuation of 3.6 million. At that time, Mike took out, I think, a short £1 million on the float. That had been the base on which I did a deal with him. I didn't even know whether he'd want to stay around. He did. And off we went. We floated at 3.6 million. I was very good in those days at making things boring, which meant doing the work, invoicing for the work, making sure the client pay. I was quite good at that. And off we went with a boring business. And I think we made 460,000 a year we floated. Then we made 620. And we were on our way. We made a couple of tiddler acquisitions. I think Mike had decided when Gordon Brown wanted to change the residency rules for capital gains tax. He wanted to move from 3 years to 5 years. Mike sold his shares and went up to Spain. And I carried on. And I think he then made a big acquisition, life-changing at the time. We bought a business bigger than us called Haydon, Haydon. And that transformed it. It doubled our profitability, went from £1 million to £2 million quid, and we were on our way. And of course, life, you look at things with rose-tinted glasses, don't you? I mean, this is nearly 30 years ago. But I remember to the day, our share price, when we had a proper broker, Old Mutual appointed to it, the analyst predicted 20p share price, and I think we were about 13 or 14p, and I thought, we'll never get 20p. Well, I was right, because it went to about 22p, and we just carried on in the story. I mean, it was just incredible. We got up to the 90-odd pence. We had a bottle of champagne in the fridge for on the odd chance it might ever get to £1, and it did. But, what did we do? We put together a great management team, all guys who'd worked with me or known me in the past, all who had taken a salary cut to come with me, all who believed in the mission that, yes, I used to be paid 50-odd grand, that gets 30 years ago. but I'll come for 35, just about can afford to pay the mortgage because I believe in what we're doing. Well, they've all made millions, of course, those lads from the early days. Anyway, years went from not only £1 to £2 to £3. I think I sold my last steak at £5.50, which in city terms is a 55 bagger in a 10p. So, hugely successful. But the real thing is, I have great pleasure in, since I stepped down and off the board completely, the business carried on. I think it put out numbers of about $1.4 billion last year, making 40-odd million. Bloody hell. How good is that? You know, beyond anybody's wildest dreams from when we started. So I think a major tick in the box.
I think all entrepreneurs want to leave a legacy, especially when it continues to thrive. So it must be amazing to look back. I'm sure you've had lessons along the way others could learn from. When you approached Mike and he was looking to sell that business, you mentioned he had a Grant and working with them to dispose of or bring somebody in to scale that business. Obviously, you had an accountancy background and you were looking to float the business. But Mike would have had a view on doing that already, or was that something you brought to the mix that other potential acquirers were not? What attracted him to your offer?
I think fundamentally, we did get on very famously. We had great interest. Mike has got the same interest in sport that I have, and we have continued to share some of those interests as we got old. We both owned the football club, things like that. Anyway, I think I was available. Come on, let's be truthful. I was on his doorstep, so he didn't have to worry about somebody else being a couple hundred miles away. I had certainly experience of what I was running at Mighty was the maintenance business, so relevant and recent experience. And we got on. So I think it's turned out a great deal for both of us. I clearly stayed on and made significantly more than Mike ever made out of it, but he's had a very comfortable life and we still do things together. I'd like to think, a mixture of experience and the people we are.
When you stepped into that business, what did you discover about the business that perhaps you didn't know very early on?
I'd previously for large businesses, like 2 FTSE 100 companies, and in Mighty, fast-growing business. And I'm going into with respect, little thing in Gloucestershire. So the thing that surprised me was getting insurance, getting a performance bond on a contract which was stipulated in the term. It's like pulling teeth. And I'm thinking, Jesus, I've never had to bare my soul to get these things in the pack because always somebody else did that. So being in a small business, so that was minute, of course, 9 million turnover at the time, was not alarming, but you had to work that bit harder to make sure you had in place what you did. One thing that Mike said to me, and I subsequently said it to many other people joining me, is he said, don't worry about you having any rejection whatsoever from the people who are already here, Bob. They will be delighted that we got somebody with your experience. I remember saying that to David Robertson, our finance director, when he joined from Mighty. David Miles, who joined me from Mighty. Both those guys, people will welcome you into the business, and that was true. You don't often get the success stories we had, but it worked.
How did you approach raising capital at different stages of the business growth?
Well, it was funny. I think our first deal, I remember going to shareholders, and I did it at a premium. And one of the fund managers said to me, Mr. Holt, I don't think you understand how it works. He said, your share price is 15p, sir, and you should be doing this issue at 13.5. I said, no, I think you don't realise how it works. This business is worth 20p, so that's why I'm doing it at 16p. And he just shook his head and, like, whatever. Because it was, again, the square root of not very much. But that was, I remember the first thing. It's still the same problems, raising capital, especially on AIM.
Can you give us some insights into listing and public companies for somebody who's not come from that background but is interested, perhaps floating their business? What are the key learning curves that you would say they would need to get grips with?
Very difficult. Floating a business today, I've just gone through it with Aaron's, relisting it. No, it took hours. So probably the advice I would say, don't do it. But if you're going to do it, and lots of people want to do it, and of course it is a great journey to wealth and to be able to share your wealth between your staff, then make sure you're ready for public criticism whenever you have any failing. And make sure that when you do have any failing, you're happy to stay around for 2 or 3 years to ensure that the city doesn't forgive you in 1 set of results or even 2 set of results or probably even 3 sets of results. It will take you a couple of years to actually get back to where you thought you were going to be. So don't puff the stock. If you set out thinking that public companies' life is easy, like Revolution did, they lost 450 million of their value in a year. Because the valuation they came to market on was, at best, ambitious, worst, something else, which I'll let others comment on. So have you got regular recurring revenues? Have you got specific cash on a runway, not just to convince the auditor that you get through working capital, but reality? Can you generate the cash? Can you, if you hit difficult times, reduce your overheads? Is there enough of an addressable market? One of the things when we came to Mears, and we had 3 or 4 different businesses at the time, we didn't really realise how big the public sector housing maintenance sector was. Looked at it, 5.5 billion market, no market leader. How's that work? No, nobody consolidated the sector. Why's that? Some not very capable people, both on buying and doing the services. Well, we can do that. And that's the management team down in Mears early on, and said, have you worked it out, guys? Because if you haven't, I have. And I know I'm going to make a bloody fortune. So get our head down. Let's not chase the dollar. Let's not chase anything on price. Let's sell on quality in a sector which wasn't known for buying on quality. What's the broad answer to your question? Research, knowledge, hard work, ability to build your team around you, be a good communicator. All those lessons of a classic leader. So, suppose we got it right.
I also think it's a bit more difficult being a CEO in a public listed company because of social media. Back in the days, you didn't have so much scrutiny where news will just go viral within a matter of minutes. How do you view that ecosystem?
Well, the whole woke scenario is healthy, isn't it? Especially when you're in a public company with people's lives at risk. When I went into Revolution, we had well over 200 Gen Z female, 25 to 35. And in walks this old bloke, me. So I walk in there, and they used to sit in the boardroom, and it was predominantly females. The females would walk past, and they'd look in the boardroom, and I used to say, they must all look in and think, how the hell do we end up with him? And what it did was, it took me a while, in my opinion, to convince them, then took them a while to understand that all I was there to do was to protect their income, protect the fact that they could pay their mortgage in 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. Still, yes, it's very difficult, but so it should be. Running a company, it's difficult. Running a public company is very difficult. If you're not up to it, don't do it. But don't moan when you get there if in fact, I'm not happy about this. Get on with it. Presumably you've got a big enough market not to worry. I recently had a bit of a dust-up with a couple of shareholders on one thing. And the advice I was given, Bob, is that one shareholder going to affect the way that you can build your business in the future? Now, I do look back as you get older. I've always been good at compartmentalising things, putting that in one box, and moving on. Just move on. Come on. We've got business to run.
So, Bob, what are some of those key strategies you've employed to scale businesses, whether it be a startup to becoming a successfully public listed company?
Well, I think people want to work for people, don't we? So I hope I've been able to inspire people to want to come on board with us. Get people with got complementary skills. I know what I'm not good at, and I know what I'm good at. I try and surround myself with people who are good at what I'm not. And that's, again, worked for me well. I think I can read people. Clearly, I don't get everyone right, because you don't. But I get most of them right, and I get people on board who really want to get on board with me, and that's how I go for it.
What would you say are the common mistakes businesses make when going public?
Most people I've seen over my 40-odd years in the public company arena, their hands have thought, public company life, that's great, make a load of money. Well, you can, but you've got to do it in the public eye. So, as I said earlier, if you make a mistake, it's not a great place to be, because you're getting absolutely lambasted publicly. But, come on, put the hard work in. And yes, the rewards are there. So I think it's a matter of research your sector well, make sure you got your right team around you, and adopt a good work ethic.
Clearly, you've built successful businesses by having great people around you, and that's been a part of your success. But what are some of the challenges that you've had to deal with when leading teams, particularly in a fast-growing company where you've got external shareholders, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Again, this is just a very personal opinion. There aren't many people who've done what I do in blue-collar services, because I think one of the things you have to do, and look, we're talking about a man in a van mentality where I've been. You don't know how many may have had, but 5,000-6,000 guys in vans. You got strict disciplines. You got to educate and get the people to buy into the mentality and DNA of the business. And if not, get rid of them, move them on. At one point in Mears, there was a statistic that said something like, when an operative stayed for 3 months, he stayed for at least 7 years. Because you've either beaten him into, stop playing your bloody radio when you're on site, don't go chatting up the kids, don't kick the cat. When you go in there to fix a plug, don't be there telling them, I wouldn't have plastered the wall like that, I wouldn't have painted that, because that's not your skill, Dave. By the nature of the trade, so you discipline, and if you do, you keep nose clean. But when you've got a wrong in your business, get rid of them. I always remember we employed somebody that I knew up in Oldham. We had a business up in there, and we employed a guy I knew. I played cricket with him, and we had the view that somebody said he'd been stealing some material. And he was a manager, so I got him to come down to Gloucester and said to him, thanks very much, sit down. Right, I believe you've been stealing, so I'll ring the police now, or you put your keys on the table and on your way. How do I get home? Not my problem. If you want to get home, sort it out with the police, because you're either putting your keys on there, resigning with no compensation and going, or the police are involved. Move on. And, dealing with lots of people prevaricate, I'm not sure, did he, could he, would he, should he, do we think, stop it. He's stolen. Move on. There's no coming back from that. We're not talking about a tube of cement. So I think clear, concise communication, effectively. I always used to say to people again, that lots of the lads in Mears, and of course, talking about the environment in which we're in, always had the view that if there was a problem, Bob, the governor, will go out to the car park and sort it out with you. Now, you explain that to a fund manager in the city, and they're looking at thinking, not too sure about that. No. I never needed to go in the car park, but it was sufficient to know that if I had to, I bloody would. But that was that particular environment. So, of course, no part of that environment in a Revolution Beauty, for example. Look, strong, firm leadership, people knowing where they are, and knowing that if there's something wrong, you get sorted and move on. We're too busy to mess around. Let's get forward.
You spoke about dealing with situations head on. How do you maintain a company culture and employee engagement during periods of rapid growth or change?
People tend to know who the wrong-uns are, and people generally respect the leaders for making some of the tough decisions to move people on. I've been doing that all my life. No doubt I'll have to do it again in the future, because that's the nature of running any business. So you have to keep focused, move forward, make those decisions.
How has your personal leadership style changed from the man you were?
Oh, clearly, it must be one of the traits that I picked up from my parents about honesty. Would I say I've become more mellow? Whereas before I used to be aggressive, I thought now I'm a bit more assertive.
How do you think your children would describe you? Did you have a certain leadership style at home?
Well, I've been married twice. My eldest son works in the city. I believe his mother says to him that apples don't fall far from the tree. She tells him and others that he's very similar to his father. My son said to me regularly, why the bloody hell are you working, Dad? I got very lucky financially probably 20 years ago, and I did a financial settlement on all my kids. I don't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff. They know I enjoy working.
What legacy are you hoping to leave behind as a business leader and a father?
In terms of legacy, I built a foundation in South Africa, which I'm immensely proud of. For that, in stitchy terms, I regard myself as very much as Marmite. I'm respected on one hand for what good I've done, and not liked for some of the levels of questioning and discussion we've had with various fund managers over the years. I think most people would see me as hardworking, honest, certainly, building teams. When I was Entrepreneur of the Year, 2005, on the stock market, I didn't regard myself as an entrepreneur. As far as I'm concerned, I just build management teams. I never risked my family home. I never mortgaged that, all that sort of stuff. I build business and then pass them on to others. And I like to do that. I am in awe of the modern entrepreneurs who come to markets with ideas, concept, technology. Just brilliant. When you look at the billions that they create in value, I don't envy that at all. Well, good on you, mate. But then when you see, them failing within 2 or 3 years, where I'm gone. And the problem with any company like a Revolution, we mentioned a couple of times, failing, is give bad view of other companies. There'll be small startup beauty businesses, makeup businesses out there today who will aspire to come to the market, and they'll build a good management team with good products, very profitable, great industry, by the way. They'll get there and they'll sit in front of an institution or two in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time, and that institution will write down not another revolution. They may have a great business, but because of what happened in revolution, that'll never affect people.
Just sticking with a revolution, what lessons did you learn from that widened your perspective, given that you've got so many years of experience in business?
We'll have to change our management style. As I'd gone from in the past predominantly managing mature adults working from a van in a private residential dwelling, to managing and motivating a global business operating in the US, Australia, UK, Germany, 64 countries, with predominantly young workforce. So there's no point adopting a management style of bitch, bollock and bite. I mean, no point going there. You want to motivating and managing the people to understand the scale of what needed sorting out, continuing at the same time to develop the opportunity going forward and making the right decisions. And you'll forget what happened. This is what we're here to do. You're going to be part of it. I mean, the thing that Revolution had, that was great really, is that it had probably one of the best second-tier management teams I've ever worked with. All female, 2 of the girls, head girls at 2 of London's top schools. Yeah, so you're talking very bright people who've got a work ethic, knew their industry and wanted to get on with it. And all I was doing as their leader was open up their mind. But of course, it's a fairly complex industry, when you've got a product on the water for 8 or 9 months in China and you're forward ordering and then you've got customers looking at it. Where are we now? You have customers now ordering for Halloween. So getting that right, making sure you've got the right supply lines, making sure it's the right colours for 2025. Very interesting dynamic market. So I learned a lot. I really felt it was my toughest gig ever, and I wish I was still there. I wish I'd still stayed there and finished what I started to do.
In your view, why did that go wrong?
We had 3 shareholders who wanted to run it how they felt was right. And that was never going to happen with me at the helm. I was never going to be dictated to by those 3 people, 2 of whom had floated the business anyway. So in the end, they paid me a lot of money to go. So you move on. So that's a problem. But Elizabeth Lake, when I was there, Derek Zisman, who I'd met before and knew Derek, it was who got me involved there. They knew what I would do. They knew I wouldn't shy away from people aggressively trying to get control of business. That was never going to happen. So in the end, it cost them a lot of money to get rid of me, which was sad, really. That was genuine. I'd have preferred to stay there.
What advice would you give to CEOs who are probably leading a business through a challenging period?
Work hard, keep focused. Cash is king wherever you are. Whether you've got millions of it or pennies, it's always king. And communicate effectively. One thing, if management teams have not been in onerous and difficult situations before, where the business may go under, what they need to do is have a weekly update with all the board, and it needs to be minuted, because if not, then the liability passes to them as individuals. So we addressed our ability to pay creditors. Do we think we got the money to pay for it? If you minute that, then any subsequent failure of the business will be based on the business, not on the directors running it. So it's something that people probably think it, but don't actually do it. Minute everything. Again, kick your team on side, manage and motivate. We talked earlier about my sporting career, which wasn't a very good sporting career, trials of professional football clubs. I played cricket and football at a higher standard than my talent was, genuinely. Invariably, I was captured because I knew that this guy needed a kick and this guy needed a couple. And if you get that wrong, especially in a game environment, imagine somebody who needed kicking, you give them a cuddle. Not only have you got it wrong, but you made it worse. It's that ability to know who needed kicking and who needed cuddling. And that is so valuable in a business environment. So I thank my what it was worth a sporting career, team environment, for actually helping me hold management skills. I always have realised that that's where it came.
How important do you think mentorship is, and how can aspiring entrepreneurs find the right mentor?
Well, you've got to keep looking and keep asking. Mentor is good if you get the right mentor.
Bob, you sat in front of a lot of investors in the attempt to raise money. That can be demotivating, particularly when you're dealing with rejection. What advice would you give to fellow entrepreneurs trying to raise money?
The motivation is simple, isn't it? Because you have to believe in what you're doing. The business you're trying to buy, the reason you're trying to raise the money, you keep going. But you're not going to satisfy everybody, are you? You're not going to find everybody who likes you, wants you, likes the sector you're in. You know, you also, and again, this is what lots of people forget about public company. And I remember it was always yesterday. I went into one of my big shareholders in Mears one day, back another company I was looking at, and he never raised his head up, which I thought was odd. At the end of it, he said, "Bob, I'm not investing, I'm not interested." I went out, and his assistant said to me on the way out, "Bob, just before you arrived, you took a call, one of the biggest investments went bust." So he wasn't even listening to you, Bob. So be clear, nothing personal. And you don't realise when you go and sit in front of the fund manager, he's got 60, 70, 80 investments already. So not only has he got to manage those on a daily basis, ups and downs and ins and outs, he's then got to go and see potential new investments and also potential new investment from his existing portfolio. So he's got all the things there. And of course, that guy probably goes home and tells his wife, "You're not going to get a new fur coat this year, love, because I'm not going to make my bonus." You've got all these different factors, so don't take it personal. I had somebody this time. He only took the call, in my opinion, from his holidays because he wanted to beat Bob Holt up. So he could tell his mates, "He gave me a right, whatever." He said, "Oh, yeah, you dine out on Mears and you dine out on this and this and this, but you have had some failures." Well, of course you have. Now, if I had been like him, I would have said, "So you've never had a failure. Every investment you've ever made, you never lost money on. Stop it, nonsense." But you don't. Take it on the chin. "Thank you very much. Sorry if we're not able to attract you on this one. Move on." Just do that. Lots of other people out there. You'll find the person who you want, who is interested in the sector, is interested in you and willing to back you, eventually.
In the UK in particular, have this culture where we look upon failure as a negative as opposed to a positive. Whereas if you look over the pond, particularly the US, they've embraced failure. Why do you think the UK has this view of failure, therefore you will never be a success?
If you buy a Rolls Royce in the UK, you're more likely to get somebody to put a key down and call you a flash so-and-so. If you get a Rolls Royce in the US, people will come up to you in the street and pat you on the back and say, "Well done." It's our upbringing, isn't it? It's our miserable weather, everything. Look, I'm a proud Brit, so I don't worry me to do more than my fair share of bull. At the end of the day, we all have to do it. It's part of our daily life. Get on with it. Work hard. Take on the next challenge. Go for it. There's a book behind you which says it all. We started off by talking about my mother, who I was very proud of. She said to me when I was very young, "If you don't work hard, Robert, you probably won't achieve anything in life. If you work hard, you've got a chance of achieving something. So, it's up to you." And nowhere has that been embraced more than by me. I still work harder than most people. And when I see somebody who works hard in any environment, whether they're a toilet cleaner, a restaurateur, waitress, a street cleaner, I invariably go up to them and say, "Well done, mate." And it's fantastic. The modern youth, some issues to get their head around, but also we're great people, hard working.
What do you quantify as hard work?
We've all got different versions. I don't sleep well, so I tend to get up early, go and sit at my desk, do a couple of hours, and then go back. Work hard. Do what's required. I've always got enough work to keep me going until I'm 100, I think.
Given that you know the market exceptionally well, we saw the failure of Carillion a couple of years ago, and I just wanted to get your view on where you think a business like that perhaps went wrong.
ISG failed similar to Carillion. Well, over-ambitious targeting. Again, I'm no academic, but I've always seen that every good management, there's only one thing, and it says set targets, check targets, reset targets. And as long as you adopt that, and if you're a Carillion or Mears or an Ernst that we are, you set targets with the team, you relook at the targets, you reset the targets, you look at them regularly. And it's called hands-on management, effectively managing people. Agree a set of targets with them. Well, it's not worked, so come on, is that down to you, me, us? What's gone wrong? Make it work. So,
do you think some of that had to do with market valuations or acquisitions that went wrong?
Well, I don't know the individual stories of both those businesses, but I do know both businesses that it didn't perform particularly well. I know that for a fact. So
is that a case of overpaying for the business?
Yeah, there'll be ego. We all got egos. I've always felt that mine's under control, but again, other people may have different views. But yeah, So ego-driven.
On one side, you need the money markets to believe in your valuations. And then on the other side, there's a lack of transparency.
Of course, yeah. Well, the market exists, doesn't it, to encourage you almost to hit previously agreed target. And if you're not used to public company life, make sure that you control the analyst. You always must under-promise and over-deliver. Over-promising and under-delivering is bye-bye. So you'll always find my businesses, we under-promise and over-deliver, always. So we think we might make whatever the number is next year, 2 million quid, for example. Well, make sure you're going to make 2.2 or 2.3. And then, just be conservative in your accounting.
Thank you so much for your time today. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Tons of learnings and insights. I will include your LinkedIn URL if anyone wants to reach out and connect with you. Folks, that's all for today's episode. If you found this valuable, you're in for a real treat. We have a treasure trove of interviews with other visionary business builders, all sharing their hard-earned insights. Don't miss out on the new releases. You'll find us on YouTube and LinkedIn. Hit the bell notification to stay in the loop for our next deep dive with a visionary business builder. Till next time, keep aiming high and building smart.